On today's episode of Thrive Forward, we are going to talk about women's rights, equity, inclusion, and grief. How do all of those transcend together? Well, today's podcast guest, Nora McInerny, who is an author, an advocate, a leader in the nonprofit sector, and just an overall badass human, joins us. You'll have to put up with a little bit of banter between Nora and I as we relive our high school days when we were Islanders at De La Salle High School in Minneapolis. However, this conversation is just wonderful. Nora and I are both passionate about so many different subjects. And as I like to say, multi-passioned. I don't think we have to limit ourselves when it comes to the passion that we have, because as women, it actually is what makes us so incredibly rounded. And I'd argue is what is going to change the world. So tune in and give today's episode a listen.
We do know each other from high school. That is a fact. We are both proud De La Salle Islanders from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Key part of my identity growing up and developing into a person. And I am now an author and I'm a social entrepreneur, which is such a strange word to say because like, Emma, I just started some stuff. I don't know. I just have ideas and then I do them is really how I think about it. And all of my work is centered around helping people through the hard things in life. And there are many, many, many hard things, which I was sort of, maybe not blissfully unaware of. I still was a depressed person before I had any problems in life. And I had it good. I really had, two parents who were married, obsessed with each other, like siblings who I really like, stable home life. All those things. And then I fell in love and my husband had brain cancer and he died. He died when our son was almost 2 years old. And from there, I spiraled downward pretty quickly. And I did a really good job of hiding that and of concealing sort of like the truth of the situation from people. And that is in a lot of ways what brings me here. What brings me here is all of the work that I've done since. I've written books and I've started a podcast called Terrible Thanks for Asking and a company and a nonprofit called Still Kickin' that provides financial grants to people in need. It all comes from the experience of having my own world fall apart in a few different ways. And the knowing, the learning that even when we feel so lonely, when we feel like this, we are going through something nobody else can understand, we are not as alone as we think we are. And the only way that we get through stuff is with other people. The only way that we grow and develop is in community with other people. So that is a brief synopsis of the past 20 plus years.
It's hard to, like, in
Since
all
we
honesty,
graduated.
it's really hard to feel like it's been 20 years since we were awkward teenagers. I don't
love knowing that. I don't love, also I'm trying to, like, for everybody, maybe this will be a part of the video.
Well, I feel like I
my
should
bangs
do, like,
are
the
splitting,
side part or get some
my bangs are
butterfly clips.
splitting in a weird way that I just can't control. And it's bugging me. Bangs are bugging me as always.
See, like I had bangs in high school and then I used those fancy butterfly clips to put them back.
You did. I don't remember you with bangs, but I do remember you with like your hair always pulled back very neatly, a lot of clips, a lot of gel.
Smooth
down. It was the look though, guys. Like it was the look, was a nice smooth pony.
Okay. I also I had
no messy buns,
the right brush. There was like there was a system.
There was a system to it. There's a system to it. That's how I remember you. Okay. I will always imagine you in a polo shirt with a tight bun. Okay. You can grow up. You can become a mom. You can start your own company. You can have a podcast, Shannon. You are 16 years old in an oversized polo shirt. the tight bun.
I'm just glad you don't remember the oversized, obnoxious Old Navy performance fleece that I wore like over my uniform all the time.
I
Also,
honestly
my
think
favorite
yeah.
Nora McInerny story is so Nora and your cousin and I were cheerleaders,
Yes. Yeah.
and you were a basketball player and a volleyball player. And back in the day, you guys, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Doesn't make any
We
sense.
cheered for volleyball and didn't want to be there. And Nora and their team did not want us there. And I remember you like leaning back to serve one time, and it was somebody was like way too close to the line, and you're like, what are you even doing here? And we all go, we don't even want to be here.
What an asshole. That sounds right. That's right.
It was like the volleyball player cheerleader.
Yeah. How
Intense.
dare
Like,
you?
it should
Okay.
be
Don't
like
you
a Disney
understand what
movie.
we're trying to do here? We're trying to lose a game quietly, not with people yelling for us. We know we're bad at this sport. Okay.
In miniature spandex. Well, like, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
boys always would watch our practices, and then they would go to your games so that
Mm.
because they couldn't watch your practices because you had a door on your
We had
practice
a door.
facility.
We had a door.
We didn't have
Yours
a
was in
door.
an open space. Yeah. No door. No door.
We didn't have a door.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
Yeah. High school's humiliating.
yes. Well, I mean, we kind of talk a lot about that aspect of things as we go through life, like our life experiences and being authentic, right? We lived in a space where there wasn't social media.
Yeah, thank God we didn't have social media. Thank God all of my just my thirstiest moments, my most desperate, my smallest, most psychotic, bizarre thoughts and feelings are in a box in my closet. They are
Folded
I
up
could
in
burn
cool little
them.
notes that would
They
be
are
passed in the
folded
hallway.
up. They are folded up. They are gone. They are essentially gone. They are not, you can't Google them. And thank God for that. Thank God for small miracles, which is that we were also, we went to a small school. We did take a class. I took a class called computers where we were taught how to write emails and make some Excel documents.
Yep.
That was the extent of it. We were not chatting online with boys or anything. It was just
Was Miss Kanipa the teacher that taught that? I feel like she taught computers for us.
she eventually taught that class, but I took it from Mr. Newman. So I took it
Well,
from
that's
Mr.
even
Newman.
better. That's even
then-
better. Mr.
yeah,
Newman, if
and
you're
then there
listening
was-
to this, we still love you.
We love Mr. Newman. My path has crossed with Mr. Newman since graduation because our oldest child graduated from DLS.
I forgot about that. Yes, and you spoke at, didn't you
circle.
speak at like homecoming?
I spoke at homecoming. I will say this right now. I would rather do an impromptu TED Talk naked streaming on the internet than speak in front of high school students.
Right?
Ever. It was,
Right.
I was like, is anyone here alive? Please blink twice if you're alive. It was just so.
They didn't have Brother Michael though either, because if
didn't.
Brother Michael was there, they would have had to have a reaction for you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you knew, and they're just sitting there like stoic. No, I had to manage several pep rallies when I was the cheerleading coach. It was
I tried to hit on a lot of stuff in that I was like, in so many ways it's such a special experience. For a lot of you, high school sucks. And that part, like, your kids like, yay. I was like, I know it's really hard. Like,
but it is.
It's just hard. It's hard even if you're like at a school that's like, very, very accepting. If you're at a school that's very, very small and like, familial, like it's just hard because it's hard to be a teenager. It's hard to be young. It is hard to be a person. It's just a hard thing to do. It sucks.
Well,
Half
I
the
think
time.
that's one of the pieces that I just love about you is like awkwardly honest. Like you are always honest, and it doesn't matter how it comes across. And you've actually created that space for me, and I know many other people, to be authentic. And going through shitty moments in life, we can swear. They'll just put like the explicit sign on the podcast, whatever. You've gone through some of those moments that are and I've walked through clients, I've been through some of those shitty moments as well.
Yeah.
And they're hard.
Mm.
And I think I remember like living in that space. When you lost Aaron, we were still in that era of like only post the positive,
Oh yeah.
only filter the pretty pictures.
Mhm.
How did
Yeah,
you
it was.
navigate that space of being honest, and how do you make space for those people now to be able to do that?
I think that I uh, have never had a strategy. I've never had a plan. I've never had I don't think too, I don't, I don't want to say I don't think too deeply. It doesn't sound great, but like I don't overthink things. I make decisions quickly and instinctually. There are things that I would have done differently with my current brain. There are things that I would do differently had I existed in the current iteration of the internet, but we're talking about 2011 to 2014, which feels in some ways it is 10 years ago. Holy
It is.
10, that's does it feel like that? I don't know, not
No.
really. I feel like that just happened. But like Instagram was truly, it was not the number one app in the world. It was the fastest growing app in the world, but it
Mhm,
was not where everybody was. Everybody was on Facebook, right? That's what
mhm.
everybody was doing. There was no such thing as like, or at least in my orbit, not in my consciousness, as like having like, a personal brand. There was no sort of uh it was not like a strategic communications device. The interface was simpler. Like literally, who could? I did not care so much about what I was sharing because who would see it? Only people who followed me. How would people
Mhm.
find me? They would have to know me. There was not a
Right.
there was not a suggestions page telling you who to follow. There wasn't.
Right.
You couldn't tag people in comments. Like this is like you could barely tag people in photos. Like it was just such a different eh, era of the internet, and the things that I was sharing, I was just sharing them with friends. Like I was just sharing them with people who knew me. Strangers didn't follow me. Strangers, that was not a thing. I didn't follow strangers. Like our worlds were smaller and different. And um I, you have a certain sense of clarity, and it's fleeting, by the way. It is fleeting. You have a certain kind of clarity when you are in crisis, when you are in suffering and struggle, and you lose that when life is too good. I will say that when
Mhm.
people are like, God, I just, well, it's like, well, yeah, you have comfort, like you have comfort, and therefore your brain can do more than just laser focus in on what is truly important, which is your survival and the people closest to you. Being physically having all of your needs met, having like the physical comfort also gives your brain space to wander and create your own emotional distress. Basically, I did not
Yeah.
have like a ton of anxiety and worry, because guess what, I was living in the worst case scenario while I was waiting in the hospital waiting room for my husband to get out of brain surgery while I'm 9 months pregnant. Like you just you don't what would you possibly care what anybody would think or say? That goes away. Okay.
Mhm.
That does go away. That does go away eventually. And I will say that I am uh primarily a creative person. So that's my strength. I'm a person who has started businesses. I am not a person who thinks in numbers and systems. I am a person who feels things and acts accordingly, and that has its strengths, and it also has its weaknesses. But I will focus on the strengths.
Yeah,
Focus on the strengths,
absolutely. That's what you should be focusing on. You can
which
hire
is like
people to do the other part.
right, like good art, like good uh, creative work doesn't come from a place of strategic thinking. It comes from a place of like intense
Mhm.
emotion, and my best work is an act of anger.
Mhm.
Like that is a fuel you can use for all kinds of things. Sorrow, and revenge. Those are my three, like those are the three pillars of creativity for me. Is like, you, I have one of the top 5 TED Talks. That was an act of passive aggression, Shannon. I made a TED Talk that anybody who is experiencing like grief can forward to the people in their lives who don't get it, so that I can do the talking for them, because that is what I needed. And I cannot remember the question, so I don't know how to conclude.
I love you. It was more so just the aspect of, I think for me, especially, and I think for a lot of people, we tend to listen to the voices on the outside when things are hard and we're trying to form communities where we want to be heard and validated, and we want those spaces to be genuine and not a filter of perfection. And there are several different generations that don't necessarily always see that. I think as women going into businesses, starting our own businesses, being forward centric and making those businesses conscious, are breaking boundaries that haven't necessarily been broken, because we live in a very systems-based patriarchal society. How do we use for good anger, grief, revenge? Because those are feelings that we absolutely feel, and we don't talk about them. Or sorrow, like feeling like you want to cry on the bathroom floor, like snot, ugly,
It's like,
cry. Those things
I
are
mean,
okay.
they are okay. And it's not as if I like advocate for everybody to be like, oh, like just go bleed out emotionally in front of all your coworkers. That's not a requirement of being like a genuine person, of like, or of, creating a culture of like emotional honesty. However, I'm very interested in how you entered the workforce, because I am 2 whole years older than you. So let me just tell you a little story from grandma. But it's I'm 2 years older than you. And so the people who I was raised by professionally, right, were baby boomers and Gen Xers. And those systems that you're talking about, it's like, how do we do things? Well, we did things the way we always did them, right? And people, we always want to assume the worst of like whatever generation is coming before us and after us, right? Like, there's Gen Z, he'll never. We were the conundrum to people, right? Like millennials, like they just don't want to, like work 50 hours a week. But I don't know who they were talking about, because every millennial I knew came in and was like, okay, if this is what you're telling me I have to do, I will do this. I will have no boundaries between work and home, except that I will never. I understand that my personal life is to never infiltrate the office, right? I will take a doctor's appointment, and that would be PTO, no problem. I will pay for my own doctor's appointment. Oh, I will not take this. I will not take this call at my desk, and I will be the first one there and the last to leave. However, when I'm at home, oh, my work life can bleed in there as much as it wants. Like if you were in your early 20s, if you're in your mid 20s, like if you were when I was a brand new mom, I knew that my value was always going to be tied to not to my potential, but that it was only going to be as good as the last thing I did forever. And so was I checking my email on my maternity leaves? Yes, I was. Was I laying in bed as a 23-year-old, like feeling like the phantom vibrations of my BlackBerry? Absolutely. Would I leave dinner with friends or a boyfriend to take a call from a client? Did I have a fucking client call me as I was boarding a plane to England to go to a wedding? Yeah, I did. What an asshole. Like, what a asshole bitch she was. and she was a person who was trying to like flex her power over me, and so that is how I was conditioned to view work too, right? Which is like, there's a hierarchy. You have to pay your dues. Your dues are paid. In the accounting is shady. No one can ever tell you what you owe or how you've paid it. There's no basic accounting principles. And in many ways, I perpetuated that. There's this woman who was one of my and she was an intern and she was a coordinator at the ad agency I worked with. I made her first 2 years of professional life hell because I was just doing what every
What got
boss had
done to
done to
you?
me. And I didn't think it was wrong either. I was like, just keep doing it. Stay later, do it longer, like try harder. Mistakes are not allowed. How dare you make a mistake? And then you should hate yourself for that mistake. And I think about that, often because I follow her on Instagram. I think about that often. Like, what are the ways that I perpetuated that, and what are the ways that now that I'm in a position of, you know, influence or a position of control in the organizations that I am building, what can I do differently? And the fact is, like, there's a cost to doing things differently, and that is something that is worth talking about too. There's a
Yeah.
cost to it, right? To run something like that feels ethical and good to your and that aligns with your values.
Yep.
There's a reason that most people don't do it.
Yeah, because there's not always a lot of pay associated with those things either.
Very little remuneration for doing things for doing things kindly. And I think that that's worth saying. It's worth saying out loud. It's built into, the pricing model when you buy a steel cake and shirt. Like, well, everybody who works for us now makes a living wage according to the living wage calculator. And it doesn't matter if you work 30 hours for us or 10 hours for us, you make a $15 minimum wage. That's what you get. Most people make more than that. And we don't drop ship stuff. We pay a person to print it. So you're paying for the item, but you're really also paying to keep other people employed and paying their rents and paying their mortgages. And man, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, you
That's
asked me what
It's
the
like,
difference was between my 2 years and your 2 years. And I would say not much. Especially working in a male dominated field with very few women. Although I graduated because I went 4.5 years in college. Wink, wink.
victory lap.
Yeah, woohoo! Because I was working full time to be able to send myself to school. Because even though we went to private school, I was a scholarship kid, and that was the only way that I was ever going to be there. And that's the same way I attended St. Kate's. And so I went 4.5 years. So I graduated right before the major recession, and there weren't a lot of people hiring financial advisors unless you had a little black book of people that you knew. I didn't have a little black book of people I knew I could call on and be like, hey, so would you like to invest money with me? I just started. How many people want to hear that? Probably not that many.
Well, hear me out. I'm 23. Do I have money? No. Would I invest with me? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where you come in. Okay.
So I took a job working at Target, and I worked quite literally 60, 70 hours a week. I would be there early. I would be there late. I remember somebody telling me though, it was a male, and he was showing me how to scan something. I knew how to scan it.
It's like, but let him show
and I was like, oh yeah, like this big mistake. I should not have said that, right? Like, oh, you are so ungrateful. Do you even want to be here? And I was like, I'm sorry. Yeah, I knew how to scan that. I didn't need you to show me. I thought I was saving you time and me time. And like,
I got it.
I got it. And so I put in endless hours. I also, when I had started, I had just exited a terribly emotionally abusive relationship that had ended in him cheating on me anyway, long story short, it was a horrible situation. We had been living together. I had made a lot of really poor financial decisions in that time frame. And I was also dealing with some historical traumas that I had and needing to go into some therapy for it. I had to go into HR and be like, I'm going to need to switch the nights I work because I have to attend this group therapy session. You need to go to therapy? Are you crazy? Should we keep you on staff? Like, are you sure you're stable enough to keep working? And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm just fine. I'm just trying to take like the healthy route of like dealing with
Yeah.
this stuff so it doesn't haunt me for the rest of my life. No? Oh, okay.
No? Oh, yeah. No, no, no. I honestly forget it. I'll just keep working. No.
Just like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
So I got it switched, thankfully. But then like forwarding on to the rest of my career, then I got back into finances after the economy stabilized a little bit. And I started my banking career, and it was very interesting. And I was very good at my job.
Mm.
And there were women that I worked with who didn't like me, and there were men that I worked with that didn't like me. And it was because I was outspoken, because I did kind of challenge the status quo of, hey, maybe have we thought about like, I don't know, like doing something for appreciation for our employees? Like they work really hard. Like, I don't know, like, could we get them a burger or some pizza or like do like how about
We
our
got him a job.
clients? Our
Okay.
our
Yeah.
clients do a lot. Is there something extra that we could do? I planned like a whole client appreciation event,
Yeah.
and people are like, "Wow, this is really nice. How'd you think of that?" I was like, "I don't know. I just thought about like what I would like
Yeah.
like
Being a thoughtful
I
person.
and like also, I don't know, asked people."
Yeah.
So it was like it was very different. And then my career started to go like not like this.
Mm.
And it was hard because I was the youngest. And I remember
Mhm.
sitting in a leadership training in Canada and them talking about how to lead and influence millennials.
You're like,
For those of you that can't see my face right now, my eyes
yeah.
are big. Um, and I laugh because my buddy who was sitting across the table knew obviously I was a millennial. So he's kind of laughing about it. And my peer who manages the team with me is like nudging me. And the facilitator had no clue. The other people in the room had no clue. And I'm like, have you ever just like, I don't know, sat down and talked to them about what they would like their work
Mm.
experience to be? And I that's how I started to lead my teams, and move forward in my career. And I got a lot of pushback. I remember
Yeah.
a boss literally screaming and yelling at me on a conference call the day I got back from maternity leave in full postpartum anxiety after I'd lost my grandfather, who was like my second dad. I'd lived with him my whole life. I had no idea what happened on my maternity leave because, unlike you, I didn't have access to email.
Mm.
They shut it down. I couldn't have
Mm.
accessed it.
But
I
then
would have
punished you
if
for
I
it.
had, like, I
Yeah.
would have accessed it
Yeah.
because I would have felt the pressure to do that.
Mhm.
And he literally lit me up in front of all my peers because I had no idea what my team's production was the past 3 months that I had been nursing a child
Mm.
and changing poopy diapers. Oh, and by the way, having projectile poop, sometimes come at
Yeah.
you, and then,
Yeah.
you
And just
don't
having
have
your
bladder
body
control, so
just
you
like,
piss your own pants.
yeah,
Like,
just,
so yeah,
uh,
so that was like my experience. And so, yes, you mentioned like trying to establish businesses that are doing good in the world and how that's just so different. Like I left corporate and they're like, you're going to fail. You're
yeah.
not, what are you doing? Like, are you okay?
Yeah.
You're leaving a job that's making you boatloads of money. Why would you do that?
Mm.
Um, well, I'm a financial planner. Don't you think that I had a plan?
Yeah.
Of course I had a plan. And I
Yeah.
want to do something different with with my
Yeah.
life in my world. I don't want to
Yeah.
have it be different. Sorry, I could go
Mhm.
off on a tangent about all of that, and I'm in a hot
No,
seat
it's
today
not. That's
after.
like that's I think that's important to the conversation, honestly, because it's like you without examining kind of all of the systems that we are a part of without some awareness, like you there I mean, you can start a business and not change anything,
Mhm.
and not make the difference that you think you are because you're just recreating the same system that you found suffocating, only now you're at the top of it.
Mhm.
And that's I think what like the growing pains of a business are. And that's kind of where we are right now too, is like thinking like, okay, so we're growing and we've been growing, we've been doing it really quickly. We're doing it in the right way. Are we growing in the right direction? Like, are we doing what we set up to do? And if not, now what? Now what do we do? So I just want, I think what I want more than anything is for people to, people who are familiar with my work to realize that like there's a difference between like what things look like uh online and like the operations of a thing and like the reality of a thing. And that is always the case. That's always the case, even when, you know, I'm not, I don't post good photos. I'm not a good photographer. So
I know I asked you for
like, I don't
photos and I was like, I'm just going to take screenshots of your Instagram live and I'm going to use those.
It's like, I do have a couple. I do have a couple. Someone came and took photos like earlier in the
Well,
in the pandemic, but
I can always phone in Lindsay and
you
she
can
can
get
get us
them. You
some
can
photos.
get them, but yeah, it's like it's not like I don't really talk a lot about. I don't do a lot of like presenting an image of the work, because that's not the work, if that makes sense. Like that's not like I'm not in the business of trying to make other people, specifically women, envious, although I don't think anybody believes that's their intention. That is often like the result, right? Like, I don't feel good about myself if I'm looking over at somebody else's page. By page, I mean their Instagram, right? It's like, keep your eyes on your own paper. That is very valuable. You have to have a very small amount of people who are in your orbit, whose opinions you truly care about, who you know are invested in the same things you are, including yourself, who want to see you succeed. And those are the people whose opinions that you have to prioritize. And also, you can do really well, you can do good work, you can love what you do and still have it be work. You know, it can still be hard. It can still be something where on like Friday afternoon, you're like, oh my God, get me away from this laptop, even though you love it. And there's this sort of, we're coming out of, I think, you know, like the pendulum swings wildly. And for a while there, it was like, you know, influencers were about like perfection. It was really about like image. And I do think there's always going to be a corner of the internet who craves that, who finds a lot of satisfaction in that. And then there's this almost like wild swing towards like the other side. And the truth of an experience is like, it is somewhere in the middle. Like
it's both and.
It's both and. It is. It's like some days are really, really good, but we're also coming out of this like the same pendulum swing that was like, you know, oh, all perfection was also about like hustle and like make it happen, make your dreams come true, da, 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 and like, oh, you're not dreaming big enough. You're not doing like, you know, you were made to do more than just, you know, pay bills and die. And it's like, is that what you think of people who just have jobs? I don't. Jesus, no, I don't look at a person and think like you're just paying your bills and getting ready to die. Fuck off. Like, there's nothing more noble about you know, starting a business or doing your own thing than there is like getting a regular paycheck that pays your mortgage and gives you some sense of security. There's no
and financial
hierarchy.
Stability, like it,
right?
whatever it gives you, right? Like everybody has their own, and like, let's be honest, 90% of the world don't want to be entrepreneurs.
No, and honestly, 90% of the world should not be. And also part of it, I do wonder, I'm like, I wonder how much of this is just my sort of like my brain still being in that wiring of like danger and trauma, and you know, needing a certain amount of chaos to keep myself, you know, going. Because
well, I talk to a lot of people about like their goals and their passions and their money and their finances, and I remind people constantly, like, yes, you can have a full-time job and have that be your stability and collect the 401k match and have benefits that are paid for you, like, I don't know, health insurance that's really freaking expensive. And especially if you have a family to support and all of those things, those are choices that you make. And am I happy I made all those choices? Abso-freaking-lutely. I am not somebody that fits in a box, nor do I want to fit in anyone else's box. I would like to be in my own. Thank you very much. But that's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And your passion doesn't have to be the thing that creates income for you if you
My
want it to
God.
be. If you want
Yeah.
to cricket something on the weekend because it gives you life,
Yeah.
then do
Yeah.
that. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean
But
that you
it's
have to
like,
make money doing it.
you don't, and it also doesn't mean that it has to be like your full-time, occupation. My grandpa was a plumber who loved to paint. That was his passion. He loved to paint. He was
Mhm.
a plumber. Okay, that's what he did. And then he painted beautiful. And I mean, well, some were beautiful. Some were like, that sort of looks like something. Like that's what he did. Like it, and he got great joy from it, and he got great satisfaction from raising 9 children. And well, not really. He was like also kind of an alcoholic, but or very much so. But you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we are. Uh, I don't want you. I don't ever want somebody to think like that there is like um that there's anything wrong with the way that they are living their life. Like I don't. And
And
it's
you're
like
human and it's not going to be better because I mean that whole saying of like the grass isn't greener on the other side. There's just like it's different
yeah,
grass
it's just
and
different grass.
it's different
Like
grass and
my
there's going to
neighbors
be
have the
different
most amazing grass. It's fake. It's fake. I was like,
yeah.
I cannot believe your yard. And they were like, it's turf, you dummy. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I knew that. I was like, oh man, can't keep our yard alive in the desert. No shit, it's plastic grass. That's how you keep your grass.
But there's like the generations before us though that still abide by this like perfectionism and there's still people within our space that do too, but
Mhm.
like it doesn't, you don't have, there's like literally perfection doesn't exist. And
No.
talk to somebody who used to try to have the best freaking part and use the most amount of gel to gel down her hair and do everything to the T. I mean, my friends always joke with me, like, Shannon, you have to have everything in a perfect spot. Like, everything has, I leave socks all over the place. It pisses Jim Foreman off. That's my rebellion. My rebellion is leaving random post-it notes on the table. But it's because I had to learn this element that perfect didn't exist. And it was actually a band-aid of my trauma trying to live
Mm,
into a space where I couldn't get out of. And
yeah. Yeah. It's just it's a lot. There's a lot to being a person. There's a lot to like making your way in the world. And also you can always change your mind. Like at this point, 5 years into like having my own thing, I do think I'm slightly too feral to like work in an office, but I could do it. I could do it. Like it will always be there. Like other versions of life, like are going to be there. There are other things that you can do, and and uh, and it's just it's okay. And also it is like um it's very risky, and that's not for everyone, and that's okay.
yeah, I
It's
say that
okay.
a lot to people, especially when we start to talk investments too. Like what what level of comfort are you comfortable with? Do you want a roller coaster
Yeah.
ride or you want a Sunday drive? You got to figure out what kind of
Yeah.
life you want to live and
Yeah.
how comfortable. I wasn't always a risk taker.
Mm,
Um, and then I went into a field where, 100% of what you make is commission based or,
mhm.
revenue based, driven by the client's experience, not at all a salary based anything. And that gave me like, oh, okay. Like now I can, the effort I put in is the effort I get out though, too. And
Mm,
that was something that was a huge driver for me. If you
yeah.
feel like you need to have security of knowing that every 2 weeks you get the same paycheck and you can balance your budget that way and you can save and do all of those things, which you should be doing, side plug, uh, for the
Yeah,
financial part of it.
I would have, by the way, like another thing that it's like when I was in my 20s and I would do like sort of like different opportunities would like come my way. And it would be something like even I would hear about someone working like you work, right? Like being like, oh, it's all commission. I'd be like, I can't do it. I suck. Like I just would never be able to do it. I had no faith in myself whatsoever. I was like, I need to stay here where someone will give me a cookie every 2 weeks. And that is what makes me feel safe. And the thing is, like, with my financial planner, I'm like, oh no, 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 no risk, buddy. No, 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 no. But meanwhile, like I'm over here being like, oh, well, we're starting a different business this year. My husband's like, what? I'm like, I'll tell you about it later. I'll tell you about it. I don't have time right now. I'm still working out the bugs, but I registered it and got the URL, and I hired someone to do something. But other than that, like I'll catch you up. I'll catch you up. It'll be so
I love it.
very,
You're,
very weird.
that's the creative element, the big idea
Yeah.
side of things. And then
Yeah.
we channel some things, and even as women, although we can't compartmentalize our brains like most male individuals can, everything bleeds together. That's why I always hate the saying, leave it at home,
Yeah.
because
Like
you can't.
you are at home right now and at work, and so am I. I am in my bedroom. Like all of
Right.
us are. Almost
And
all
it,
of us are.
and
Ugh.
it's just such a different experience that we're all living. And you and I are very privileged that we have partners who are helpful, and children who semi-listen sometimes, and are healthy, right?
Yeah. Oh, not yeah. Knock on wood. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's exactly. And like, and I truly felt like when my husband was sick and I was taking care of him, we both were working, by the way, the entire time, because
Mhm.
America's
Medical system
America.
sucks.
And so we were both working and we had a baby. And I felt that way too. Like, oh, well, just don't let it come into work. Just don't let it affect you. Don't let it affect you. And yet, again, going the other way, I would bring a laptop to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Bring a
Yeah. And
laptop to the hospital.
it bleeds if we don't control it, and we don't establish a level of boundaries, and we don't push the limits of I just hired an employee, and she was like, I'm really hard on myself. And I said, well, know this about me. Like, I like things to be the way they are, but I'm going to allow you to mess up.
Mm, I got to do better at that. I really do. I really do. I'll be like,
I'm
I'm
going to
still
allow
on
you to
learning.
mess up, because that's how you learn.
Mm,
And I will get the opportunity to have that conversation with you and set those expectations,
yeah.
and work with you so that you don't beat yourself up. Because the last thing I want is her to go into another workspace and have all of that built up stuff like I did.
Yeah.
And so, like, trying to translate that into a healthy space. People used to always tell me too, don't be friends with your employees. And I wasn't friends with my employees, but I gave a damn about what happened to them at home. And I think
Yeah.
that that's a problem that we don't necessarily do very well, is like giving a crap about our people. And our
Hmm.
people are going through a hell of a lot. Doesn't mean they're not strong. It doesn't mean that they're
Yeah.
not resilient. It doesn't mean that they can't do their job. But hell, if I get asked for one more damn snack while I'm on a call,
Oh, I know. I
uh,
know. It's brutal. It's brutal.
yes. Any
It is.
parting words
It
of
is.
wisdom for anyone? I feel like you've shared so many great nuggets of knowledge, and
No, I wish we could
people
talk
can hang
longer,
out with
and
you.
we should just do another one, like just a regular talk as
Yeah.
friends. But it's like we also, or for the, I guess, whatever you want. But it's like there's so many parallels too between like the way that you parent and reparent yourself, and the way that goes into your work life too. Because like, who are we if not the sum of all of our experiences and relationships? And everybody is bringing their own like personal story and all the stories they've heard about themselves since childhood, which is like, I have to be
Mhm.
perfect, I have to do a good job at this, I have to, I'm this kind of person, I'm this kind of person, into work. And we spend so much time with each other. And I think there's just so much value in self-awareness. And it's something that, I mean, this conversation, I'm seeing so much. I'm like, oh God, there's still so much
We all
that I
do.
have to work on, that I just have to work on. Like, and yeah. Whew,
I always
whew.
have the construction, like, work in progress, right? Like, we're always a
Yes.
work in progress. Like, I'm
Yeah.
a hothead.
Yeah. Me
I don't
too.
know if you know that about me,
Me
Nora,
too.
but
Yes.
I'm a
Yeah.
hothead,
Yeah.
and I really like to swear.
Yeah.
And
I come in hot to anything. Anything could be a confrontation for me. Anything.
and
So not good.
especially like when somebody like challenges me, that's something constantly I'm trying to like pause and reframe and be like, oh, you're not an asshole. I'm going to figure out how to say this nicer. Right. So we're all a
Yeah.
work in progress. Where can
Yeah, we
people hang
are.
out with you, Nora? Where can they buy your books?
You can
Where
buy
can
my
they
books
support
wherever you
Still
find
Kicking?
books. Wherever you find books, you can go to stillkickin.co and see all of our work. And I'm online as Nora Borealis. which is like the Aurora Borealis, but it's a joke, just so people don't think that's my last name. My last name's McInerny. Bookstores have my books, and you should buy it from an independent bookstore. I suggest Subtext Books. They have all of my books on their website. Shop Nora McInerny, and they've got book plates so you can get a signed version. So
yes, I completely support that. From a local book standpoint, Barnes & Noble gets plenty of money, you guys, and so does Amazon. And I will say this too, as a friend of authors, more money goes into their pockets too when you support small businesses versus buying them in big brands. Nora
True.
won't say that. Other authors won't say that. I will say that for them. Support your authors, because it takes a lot to write a book and a lot of energy. And no matter how much you get paid for it, it never supports the amount of hours that go into writing and rewriting.
It's like, I know, it's like, you don't want to seem like ungrateful, but it's also just like, the reality is, like, my child said to me, will be my parting thought. The other night, Shannon talking to me, and he goes, I know you're not famous. And I was like, oh. And he just learned how to Google, so I thought that would be it. He goes, house.
Wait, what? You broke up. Wait, you broke up. What was the punchline?
He goes, our house. Like, our house? He's like, yeah, we'd have a way better house. I was like, Ian's, the bathroom wouldn't have exploded. The hot water would. I was like, okay. He's like, we wouldn't have. What are those bugs that eat your house? We have those.
Begins with a T.
Yeah, termites.
Termites.
Like, we wouldn't have termites. I was like, okay, enough. Good night. So
you know what you tell him? You tell him that a lot of people can buy things on credit, and your mother is responsible with her finances.
Right, buddy.
Just because they have a BMW and a big house doesn't mean they're financially responsible.
To me, it's so. I wish people would have told me that when I was younger, because I literally just thought anybody who had expensive things was rich.
Trust me, I see it all. I see it all, and it doesn't mean anything. And you can quite literally
very conservative
have money. People who are millionaires who look like they are standing on a corner with a sign. Don't judge a book by its cover, but buy Nora's books.
But I have very cute book covers, so do judge.
You have very good. Well, yes. So buy those. All right. Thank you, friend. I know you got to run. We're
Bye,
so
Shannon.
grateful for your
Thank
time.
you.